Who do we have with us today, brethren?
This one right here, I have been dreaming about being able to meet her. Now, I wanted to meet her in person, but this is how we're going to meet during this coronavirus stuff. But this young lady, I've heard her voice when I was attending Philander Smith College in Arkansas, and Orlando Draper was coming out with his first album. I kept hearing the name Demetrus Alexander. Demetrus Alexander. I was like, who in the world is this? And I kept hearing it, and I started hearing more and seeing her in different platforms, and now we have her here. She is, my God, she's done it all. She's a professional singer, which many of you don't know. She's a professional singer. She is a manager. She is an executive. She's none other than Demetrix Alexander Stewart. Good morning,
Good
Demetrus.
morning. Good morning.
What an honor to finally see you, meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Well, Robert Earl Dean just pointed to me, and he has been taking notes all morning. I don't think that he slept last night because
Oh
he
my
was
God, here we
so
go.
ecstatic about this
Oh, Jesus.
morning. First of all, welcome to the Wake Up Morning Show.
Yes.
I am Dr.
Thank you.
LT, and that dude over there,
It's
that's
Robert Earl Dean.
yes, yes, yes.
Well,
And we
it's
just
nice to meet you both. It is absolutely my pleasure, and I appreciate it. And anytime anybody wants to hear anything you have to say, it's a blessing.
so I'm just gonna ask you this straight up.
Yes.
Over here it's about 7:41 in the morning time. What time is it where you at?
9:41, so
Oh,
it's not quite as early.
okay, but I
She's
want you to.
Nashville, right?
What part of the
Yes,
city?
I'm in Nashville.
Okay,
Hmm.
I just
Nashville.
want to say that this morning you look ready to go. I mean,
Glamorous.
from the top of your head, I mean to the sole of your feet. I ain't gonna ask you to stand up, but I was gonna say that you look like you ready for this interview.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Being in this coronavirus stuff, I didn't want to actually even get into the habit of just every day doing nothing.
Right.
So I get up, get fully dressed, and come into my office and start working because I don't want it to be a chore. Things can become a habit really quickly.
Right.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So I'm gonna ask this an off the wall question just to start it off with us. So tell me about the new picture that you have up behind you.
That is actually just some flowers that I need to hang.
Uh-huh.
I need to get it hung, but I just have it sitting up on a desk now. But the decor in this room is chocolate, burnt orange, and gold,
Mm.
and that is the colors in that picture
Right.
that I found, and I and have yet to get it hung. That's the issue with single women. You have I have curtain rods I need hung and
Hmm.
pictures I need hung, and I'm not that one that you can just do it yourself. I got a lot of friends that are like that, but I'm not that one.
Right.
I tell people praise is what I do.
Right.
You know what I found out? Because one of our executives here, I'm like saying, oh, we got to get some nails and we got to do that. She said, no, those little 3M products where you can press and take them down.
Yep.
You see, that picture
Yes.
right there would need about 3 on each side, and you'd
Yeah.
be good to go. Press and stick.
That one is pretty heavy.
Hmm.
That one is pretty heavy, so I thought I was going to have to get somebody to put something in the wall for that because it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, and I looked at it. I said that's why I gave you 6 altogether. That will because I think 2 holds about 14 pounds.
Really?
Yeah, so 6 will really do the do.
Okay. I'm gonna try it and put a pillow at the bottom of it just in case it doesn't. So it
Right.
won't break.
Yeah.
Some support.
Yeah. See, we just want to start you off because I'm like, when people come on, I like to look around their bowl.
Being a little
You
nosy.
know,
Yes.
Being a little
because
nosy.
when you said chocolate, I'm like, oh wait a minute, she's in my den because we chocolate, but with a dash of turquoise.
Yes.
Right.
And I love chocolate and turquoise, but I had a lot of people that did that. So I was like, how can I be different? And there's a huge 8 by 12 rug on the floor
All
that
right.
has chocolate and burnt orange and turquoise and all these colors in it. So I just chose to take the burnt orange and gold out of it and play off that.
Being your creative self, and let's start off by talking about you as a professional singer, because you never talk about that.
No, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, probably 12, I guess, I started singing in the choir, and I was raised in Church of God in Christ.
Us too.
Right. And at that time, we were we were a part of Jonathan Greer's church. Jonathan Greer pastored here in Nashville for years before he went to Atlanta. That's
What?
where I was raised. I was raised up in Jonathan Greer's church. So it was the church that was the music church, of course, because he was an organist.
Right.
Emily Harris from
Bobby Jones,
New Life, and Penny. A lot of the New Life singers were a part of. Johnny Whitaker. A lot of them were a part of it was Pentecostal Tabernacle at that time. So I was like the little one that they took everywhere to sing. I don't know if you know of Novella Williams, who it was one of the baddest female keyboard players ever. But she was the minister of music there, and that's kind of how I got into it. And they would take me to convocation, and
wow.
I was the child standout. And so from there, I just went on to keep singing, and I think I ended up in Los Angeles around 1984 or so. And I was, my sister took me there to get on Star Search, because I was supposed to take our whole family and make everybody rich.
Right.
And while I was there, Pastor Greer happened to be there doing a concert, doing a revival at West Angeles, because him and Bishop Blakes were good friends.
Right.
And he said, "This is where I want you to go." I stayed there for maybe 6 months and never sung, just went to church. And finally, they were having a Women's Day, and I went on and joined the choir, and Daryl Coley was the minister of music.
Yep.
And ended up leading a song, and from there, ended up doing background vocals on Daryl's first record. I said he's one of the reasons why I hate studio music today, because he and Donnie McClurkin and Marvin Winans hear things that nobody else hears.
Right.
When it comes to vocals and parts. And from there, I just started doing studio work and sang with Reba Rambo. I traveled with her for 2 years on the CCM side. So, yeah, that was how I got started.
Wow, you named some greats. And it's funny you mentioned Church of God in Christ, because we both are Kojic boys to the bone.
Yes.
And
yes.
he's a cousin to the Blakes.
Oh, okay.
Because they're from San
Wow,
Diego.
yes.
Yes, yes.
That was where I was planted for a couple of years. And I knew, well, once I got in the choir and led a song, then I became a choir member, and that's what I did for a couple of years. And it was actually that made me realize if I wasn't singing gospel, I didn't need to be singing anything at all. And I ended up coming back to Nashville, and then started my journey with the music business.
So, sister, you don't remember me, do you?
You look so familiar to me. And I'm thinking, I said, I don't want to embarrass myself. Right. So
we'll talk later.
She
later.
playing it safe. I don't blame you.
No, I'm trying to be honest. Now, the one thing I don't like, if somebody say, "Do you remember me?" Right. and you say, "Well, yeah." No, if I don't, I don't. Right. And I just have to say, but he really does look familiar to me.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Praise the Lord, because she said in 84, and I'm like, yes, praise the Lord. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Let's talk about.
I remember Stephanie and Katrina and Melanie and all of those people. I was hanging with them.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. You go back to Nashville and you get into the music industry. What got you more interested in the music industry side of it versus performing and being on stage? And the reason why I'm asking this question is so many people, we both, Robert Earl Dean and I, work in school systems. And one of the things I always talk to young people about is that it's not always about being the quarterback or the main person on the field. Can we talk about who manages, are the trainers, who are the other people
Right.
that get to go? I have a friend that is actually an agent. He has 3 Super Bowl rings, 2 NBA championship rings, and never played a day in his life, but he was
Wow.
their agent, and they gave him rings too. So,
Part of the team.
and was able to be a part of going to this. So let's talk about why not the center stage.
One thing, when I first came back to Nashville, I actually got a job at a hospital. I was working in the social services department of a hospital, and I started doing concerts during the Gospel Music Association week with gospel artists, because at that time they didn't have a platform in like they do now in the Gospel Music Association. And I started pulling artists together during that week to raise money to give to nonprofit organizations, to Meharry Hospital's children's hospital wing, because money was going to Vanderbilt already. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And then when I started, I was still kind of wanting to sing. Actually, even on those concerts, I would sing at the end. But when I got a job shortly after that at Warner Alliance, as their receptionist. Actually, a friend of mine and I were together, and she used to do A&R for Word, but they had moved, and she wasn't working, and the people that were running or going to start Warner Alliance knew her and asked her if she wanted a job, and she told them she wasn't going to go back to do receptionist or marketing assistant or anything like that. She wanted to remain in A&R, and she said to them she might do it. And I was like, okay. So I went and interviewed for the job and got it, and that in itself was a miracle, and it's a whole nother story. But after getting in there, I really thought that was going to be my step to singing, but they allowed me. I was the only African American that worked there, and they allowed me in every meeting that they had.
Wow.
Whether it was marketing or A&R, or they allowed me in those meetings.
I got to stop
And
you. I got to stop you.
That's crazy.
Because and the reason why I want to stop you is this, because I want you to talk about, because you are like the 4th person that said they got on by first starting off either as a secretary or receptionist. Can you talk about the special place that starting at that position brought you to this point? Because people are missing that you took something that a lot of folks don't want to take.
Yes.
But then you said it ushered you in. So can you break it down a little bit more for those people that are trying to get into the industry about where to start?
Yeah, it is very important to, I even now when I tell people, it's like, don't despise the small things.
Come on.
And in that, don't see something small as small.
Right.
It's a step. It's not just small. It's a puzzle to a big picture.
Yes.
And I, being there, I found myself just learning. It's important to know. And even when I reached the point of being president of a label, I still would say to myself and to my staff, if the trash needs emptying, empty it. You should never be dependent on someone to fax something for you or email something for you. You should be able to do everything as if there's nobody there but you, whether you have to or not. And sometimes it's just good to do, even when somebody else is there to do it.
That's right.
So it's very important. And I think that it helped me to have a real understanding about what I was doing. And above all else, because I believe that it was a calling, and not a job, it helped me even throughout my career to be able to talk to anybody on any level. And to this day, the one thing I thank God for, people may not necessarily like you, but they'll respect you.
Yes, ma'am.
And because they'll appreciate the fact that you don't think you're better than anybody else or bigger than anybody else, but that job in itself was an assignment for me.
Okay, and I'm gonna stop you.
Yeah.
I gotta stop you, Sister Alexander. You said
Yes.
it again. You said people might not like you,
Come on.
but can you break that down? Because a lot of folks struggle with being liked.
Liked.
Can you break that
Yes.
piece down too?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing for me. I just do. I always had an audience of one. I needed to be able to go to sleep at night and know that God was pleased.
Yes.
Not people, but God was pleased.
Yes.
That I was honest, that I had some level of integrity, and that I brought him into everything I did. I have a real, it actually grieves me to a certain degree now to see so many people running God's business that don't have a relationship with God.
Oh my
Oh
Lord.
my.
Jesus.
And if you don't have a relationship with God, it's going to be hard for you to deal with his people, because it's going to be hard for you to hear him and how to deal with his people. And in what we do, be you a receptionist or a president, and you're under the umbrella of gospel, you're here to honor him and be a blessing to his people, not to build your. We're building his kingdom,
Yes.
not our kingdom. And so that is important. You can't, if you're just out to please people, you're gonna have you're going to be like a schizophrenic, because you'll just be running from one thing to the next. So you have to ground yourself in who called you and what he called you to do, and know that that is what God will bless what he assigns. That is for sure.
Right. And what I like from studying you and looking and making sure I knew about you like I wanted to, you have worked your way to the top. No man can take credit for where you are right now.
Absolutely.
You were a
Absolutely.
receptionist, then you were director, promotions director, and
Right.
then God took you to that real big twist of when you helped start Verity through Zomba Records.
Yeah. And actually, it was Jive at the time. And a friend of mine, actually, there's a quick testimony with that. I had asked Warner Alliance for a raise, and they didn't give it to me. And when, let's go back a little bit further with the promotions director. I remember being in the office one day, and because Warner Alliance was a part of Warner Brothers, it was a part of Quest. So we actually, even though Warner Alliance was started by a guy in the country world who was running Warner Brothers country label,
Wow.
his name, it escapes me now, but he had Take Six, Donna McElroy, I think Margaret Bell, but they also had Michael English and some others. But they ended up, because we were the Christian division, and we had to deal with the Winans and Andre Crouch and everything that was on Warner and Quest label,
right.
Take Six. So he asked me one day, he said, I'd only been there like 6 months.
Wow.
And he said, we need a gospel promotions person, because they're wanting us to deal with these other artists, and I need you to set up some interviews for me. And he gave me this list of people that he wanted to interview, and all week these people were flying in and out doing interviews with him. And on that Friday, I came upstairs to tell him that I was getting ready to go home, and he said, Demetrus, you know what? He said, I believe that of all these people, I've been interviewing all these people, but I really think the person that I need is standing right in front of me.
Wow. Look at God.
I didn't know anything about gospel promotions.
Wow.
And he said, and he offered me that job and an administrative assistant to marketing job. And a friend of mine said, don't take the marketing job, because once you get in that, you won't be able to move. So he said, I want you to go home and pray about it. And I came back Monday and I said, I will take this job if you let me give me a week to go sit with Al Hobbs, Vicky Mack, and Talisa Stinson.
Wow.
And I spent 2 days with each one of them. And I said, well, I promise you, when I come back, I'll know how to do this job.
Wow.
And that's what I did. And that's how I became the promotions director.
So I'm going to ask you,
wow,
just real straight. A beautiful, attractive woman in an industry that many times is male dominated. How did you manage? How did you progress and still keep all of your integrity and everything?
Because I was in church.
Mm-hmm.
I had leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I had covering. My church was not my work. Just because I went out and, went to some concerts and attended some conferences, I still came home and went to church and served.
Come on, come on.
And I was not Demetrus, the record company person when I got to church. I was the intercessory prayer. I was in the choir. I was working with the youth. I was, dealing with the young girls. So I did not separate that or shut that part of my life out. And it was that covering that helped me to stay grounded and to continually hearing the word and getting in the word and going to Bible study. If I was at home, I was involved in what was going on at church. And I believe that was the thing that kept me grounded, because for me in the industry, not only being a male dominated industry, because I didn't come through the ranks of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I got a job out of nowhere that God set up,
yes,
with all white people, and was trying to integrate with Black people that I did not know.
Wow.
And they're looking at me like, where did you come from?
Right.
You don't know nobody. You don't. And I mean, it was not pretty, even amongst my own people at the very beginning. I was very much a loner.
Wow.
But it gave me an opportunity to sit back and watch and hear God, and again, maintain a level or get to a level of respect, because I just there were some things I just could not be a part of, would not be a part of. And I just was trying my best to take my directions from him.
So, as a young person, how many brothers and sisters did you have, and where did you land in the brother-sister combination?
I had 3 sisters, and I was next to the oldest.
Okay, and that's this 3 girls, or 4 girls altogether.
Yep.
So
no brothers.
And you was next to the oldest. So if I had all 4 of your sisters here, who was the one that if you got in trouble, they was the one that was gonna fight? Who was the one that was gonna pray, and who was the one that was going to negotiate the peace?
My oldest sister would be the one to fight. I would be the one to pray, and I would be the one to negotiate the peace.
Okay.
And who would run? You have to have one that's going to run.
The youngest one would run.
So, and the reason why I asked that is because when I think of Kojic, you know what I'm saying? For you to be so progressive in the industry,
Yes.
there had to be some things that took place as a young person that kind of catapult you. And normally in the Kojic arena, we got those that will pray, those that will fight, and those that will push us.
Right.
So
Yeah.
For you to be at this level, I said, boy, she must have had some praying and some pushing folks up in her
fighters,
family.
yeah.
And some fighters.
And actually, they weren't necessarily in my family, but they were in my circle.
Okay.
They were, and let me just say too, and this is probably one of the most powerful things, and I don't want to leave this out. I was a teenage mom at 16 years old. I had a child. In the Kojic, and even in Kojic when I was in there, that was probably one of the most embarrassing things
Yes, ma'am.
that you could possibly do.
Yes, ma'am.
I couldn't get my child christened. I had at Sunday service. I had to take her to Bible study and
Wow.
do it.
Wow.
I couldn't sing in the choir.
Wow.
Fortunately, even with like a lot of the older Kojic people that were around, Pastor Greer at that time was more of a progressive Kojic pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And so he really made sure that I did not get caught up in my mistake.
Right.
And he also, said, don't make another mistake trying to clean up a mistake, because my mother was trying to force me to get married. And Pastor Greer said, why would you make her make a mistake after making a mistake that's
Right.
going to lead to another mistake?
Right.
You know? And so I had that kind of covering around me with women who really believed holiness was right, but had also had compassion and empathy and could take the time to really massage. And I am close to a lot of those women to this very day, because I, by nature, was not a person that had high, self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
Didn't think a lot about myself. So it was, and sort of an introvert, if you will, outside of singing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was those things. That's why I say it's very, very important who your circle is, because you will live or die off of what you're feeding on.
Right.
And so that was very, very important for me. And so it wasn't so much where it wasn't hardcore traditional Kojic at that time, because it was kind of transitioning, and because of who Pastor Greer was at the time. He was kind of considered, even though he was popular in Church of God in Christ, he was still kind of considered a rebel,
Right.
if you will. So fortunately, that was the thing that helped me to gain some kind of foundation and stability.
So I'm going to ask this question, and this is because I work with a lot of young people, and especially when young women get pregnant in the church. I'm one of those people who say, we ain't setting them down. If we setting down, we setting everybody down, But the one
Right.
thing, I was talking to a young lady once, and she said to me, she said, Elder, she said, I want to be clear. This was not a mistake. This was my choice. And I'm choosing also to keep my child. And I said, okay. And when she said that, it really shook a lot of people, because they said, okay, this was not something that was a mistake. This was something that she chose to do. For you, in moving forward, as you're ministering to young women, how do you help them during this time when they're faced with it? Because I can imagine, I'm just imagining that you have an amazing daughter now.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about what your advice would be to young women now, and also I just want you to testify about this amazing daughter too, that you
Well,
chose to have.
well, and I will say her being an amazing daughter was a long process,
Mm-hmm.
because um, you're still a teenager trying to parent,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to, that became very much a part of ministry for me, because as I got older and thinking through my own experience, we spend a lot of time focusing on the children, but not the mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so my focus became the mothers, because I knew part of my reason was my father was an alcoholic. My father was not a believer. My mother was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not, we moved from Detroit to Nashville. He was
Wow.
not present. And there are just some innate things that are in us. And God set it up like he set it up for a reason, that are missing when things are not in the order that he wants them to be in.
Right.
And so it was an attention thing for me. And I think what I tell young people now is that what you're doing is no different. Your reasons are no different from what our reasons were. You just have different outlets, different ways of manifesting it.
Right.
So it was very hard trying to still be a teenager, because you don't become a mother just because you had a child.
Right.
Your mind doesn't change. And I'm still 16, wanting to, feeling alienated at school, wanting to participate in what all the 16-year-olds participate in.
Mm-hmm.
The baby is crying. My mother's working 2 jobs. So it was very, very hard. So raising her was not an easy thing. And like I said, she suffered a lot of backlash from that didn't catch for her until she was probably in her 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So to young girls now, I say, again, put yourself around people that can help you and listen, because a lot of them just don't want to listen. Like, you got to be willing to let somebody tell you or help you navigate that process, because your mind is still 16 or 17 or 18, and it doesn't just flip because you had a child.
Right.
And so I had to get some people around me that would help me, but that I would not then give the total responsibility of raising my child, because it was what I did. It was my responsibility. I needed help, not the ability to leave and go where I wanted to go and do where I wanted to do. It needed to be a partnership with people that I could trust to help me navigate that process.
But through it all, there still was that ambition once you started learning yourself and getting the support from those people in that church. Because I'm telling you, you helped launch one of the greatest gospel labels in history. It wasn't even there until you helped them create it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the formation or building of Verity Records. You were the foundation.
And again, and that's why, I just cannot emphasize enough how important a relationship with God is, and what I didn't know what I was doing, really. I really was just listening to him. A friend of mine, when I was working at Warner Alliance, called and said, hey, they Jive wants to kick off a gospel label because they're in the process of doing a distribution deal with Ty Scott. And they don't know anything about gospel, and it's going to go under their urban stuff, but they need somebody to run it. And I think that you need to apply for the job. When I told my boss that they had asked me, and again, this was after they had told me they weren't going to give me a raise.
Right.
I said, I got offered to do a job to take this job. And he said, well, I don't think you should do it because you really are really good at what you're doing, which was gospel promotions at the time. And I think you just need to stay there, because if you try to do something that you're not really good at and fail, you're going to have to start all over again. I was like, that didn't sound right. But I was like, okay. He said, but you should go and do the interview, because you never know in life. He would always say, never not take an interview, right, even if you don't want the job. Mm-hmm. So I went to New York and took the interview, and they took about a month and a half to come back and say they wanted to offer me the job. I prayed and prayed and prayed, and I kind of felt like, I don't know, in myself, I'm right, like, I don't like New York. I don't know that I want to be there. The spirit in this place is not right.
Right.
And I had to speak for some girls at a conference in Miami. And I had a dream of this lady standing in front of me, and she was a doctor. She was dressed like a doctor, but she was cutting an umbilical cord. And that was it for the dream. When I got to Miami, this lady was speaking as I walked in, and I went to the front row, and the closer this lady got to me, the more my stomach started to churn, and I just started to cry. When the lady turned around, she looked just like the lady in the dream.
Wow.
And in the middle of her message, she turned to me and said, God said to tell you, you're going somewhere and you're going to feel like a sheep amongst wolves. Wow. And it was the confirmation that I needed to take that job.
And you did both.
And that whole year, I never signed anybody. They wouldn't sign Donnie. Donnie's on their label now, but when I was there, they would not sign Donnie.
Wow.
I didn't sign anybody. But I established Verity, named it, got the logo, did all of that, established it. All the while at Warner, they can't find anybody to take the job. They do like 30 interviews. So I'm actually helping them with Warner and doing Verity at the same time.
You was working both. That's unheard of.
I was working both.
That's unheard of.
Right. Because and so finally, right after 9 months of being there, my boss from Warner called and said, What if God took you away just to bring you back? And I thought, maybe. So I went home and I said, now, God, if this is you, I know you're not a God of confusion and you
Yes.
don't you're peaceful. If this is you, if I take this job, I need my boss's boss to call me and offer it to me. I need the people here at Verity. I need to be able to come back here and work again if I want to. And I need the transition to be really peaceful. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And I went back to go back to Warner. I went back as I left the promotions director. I went back as VP of Gospel, and I told them, I want you guys to sign Donnie. I want you to sign Orlando, and I want you to sign Beverly Crawford. And that's how I ended up back in Nashville after a year. Just started Verity, like that was what I was supposed to do, go start it. And there was a lot of ministry that went on amongst employees in that time frame. And came on back to Nashville and went from there.
And that's crazy because in the industry, you don't work for no two major labels.
Mm-mm.
So that was God orchestrating the whole thing. Your life, it seemed like it's always been God putting you in places at the right time that you didn't even choose to be in.
Mm-hmm. And actually the same thing happened when I got ready to leave Warner to work for CC.
Mm-hmm.
I told my boss, CC has offered me this job. I want to go do it. He said, at the time, Warner was going through a big overhaul, and he said, listen, I want you to take that job, but I need you to let me, check this out. I need you to let me keep you on the payroll, and you can work from here until this thing passes so that I could keep your position, because I don't want to lose that position, because they were putting a freeze on hiring. Wow. He said, and if so for 4 months, I worked for Warner Brothers, getting paid by Warner Brothers and starting and getting paid by Pure Springs in their office. And the month that they decided that he was like, okay, we can let you go now. That month is the same month that CC found an office. So I was able to transition out of their office into her office.
Jesus Christ.
So, let me say this to you, and I want you to tie this all out. This little girl from Michigan, who became a single parent at the age of 16, that was a superstar vocalist, and now you fast forward to today,
Jesus,
and see all that God has brought you through. What is the testimony? What is the statement that you can make to every person that's listening today? Because, I see a movie, a book, a talk show, and everything else with you. I'm like saying the sky is the limit.
Jesus.
What this? I mean, give a statement. I mean, because right now I just want to just take a picture of you and put it up there and say it can be done. It can be done.
God is. You're gonna make me cry because God is so faithful. I even now, during a lot of this coronavirus stuff and all the stuff that's going on, and I get in conversations with people and they're scared and talking about the evangelicals and this and that. And the only thing I can say is that God is a big boy and he can handle his stuff and his people.
Yes, ma'am.
He's been doing it all along.
Yes.
And I try my best not to let anything throw me off to the point that I don't remember who God is. And I said to somebody the other day, is we've got to get to a point where the scriptures that we've learned and the messages that we've heard are not just cliches, but they are something that you really believe. God really is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yes, ma'am.
He really does care for, he really does have plans for us that are to prosper us and not to harm us, but to bring us a hope and a future.
Yes.
He really does never forsake us. Or we got to get to a point where it is not just something that we say, but something that we know, something that we walk, something that we talk, and something that we remind ourselves of. And because of that path that I know better than anybody else, even the things that I don't remember to say, or the stories the times that God has intervened, that I don't even remember sometimes. God is faithful.
Yes.
He is absolutely faithful. And I really believe that anything that I don't have is because it wasn't mine. And anything I have, it's because it was. I can applaud anybody who's doing anything. But I tell you, to maintain your foundation, to maintain your grounding, you gotta give God the glory. You cannot dismiss him in anything that you do, any part of your life.
And
I want to say to you, before I turn it over to Robert O'Dean, thank you. Thank you for being that
Yes.
little Church of God in Christ girl that
Yes.
did not have your joy stolen away from you. Thank you for representing the kingdom in the midst of the trial. Thank you
Yes.
for being the example of what an executive should look like.
Yes.
Thank you for being that woman of God that continues to serve even to this day. Thank you. Thank you so much, because so many people give up when
Yes.
when something goes adverse to what they had planned. But your testimony is, even though I might have felt like giving up, my circle and the people that were around me kept me, and this is the outcome of what God will do if you surrender your life. So thank you.
You're so welcome. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I want to say last too is, like, we don't kick against the process.
Yes.
Process is, going through is just that, going through. And I cannot look at anything that has happened in my life, good or bad, that there wasn't something that came from it that helped me to get to the next place. We were having 105 days of prayer at our church during this corona stuff. And the Lord said to me, I know this is a deep valley, but as deep as the valley is as high as the mountain will be.
Wow.
Amen.
So we can get through, do the process. Don't kick against the process. Call on God to help you get through the process, but know that there are lessons in the process. There's lessons in the valley, just like there's blessings on the mountain.
Yes. And there will be blessings after this. I believe God is going to do some really, really big stuff for those that are believing, and those that are in position, and those that are prepared once this pandemic dies down. Because God has control of everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I just want to say, I appreciate your persistence, and you're not quitting, because it gives others hope as well. And congratulations on your gold record through that Dunning McClurkin project on Warner Alliance.
Yes.
You got the first gold album for them.
We did, and we had the first. We were the first at Warner thing. I didn't even remember this, but the first to do a comedy piece. Jonathan Slocum was the first Christian gospel comedy artist that was recorded and went gold.
He went gold?
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Slocum, yeah, he did. Mm-hmm.
Wow, and you orchestrated that?
We did video, huh?
You orchestrated that event as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's a big baller. You a big baller, shot caller for Jesus. That's all I can say. And we're so honored. And my cousin John DeCure told me to tell you that he loves you.
I love him too.
Yes.
He is so sweet, so talented.
Yes.
I do. I love him. And thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate
Thank you.
it.
What an honor.
And anytime.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, there you have it right here on God Radio. The woman, the woman of God, the executive, the one that said, I won't stop, I won't give in.
Yeah.
I'm going to see what God has until the very end.
Yes.
None other than
the incomparable Miss Demetrus Alexander Stewart. And we're gonna play an Orlando Draper song in tribute to you, because that was my friend. I was gonna sing for him when I graduated from college. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So I got a reason
I got
right
a
here
reason.
on GODRadio1.com.